One thing that I learnt very early in my real estate life is, at the end of the day, if there was something that a vendor was waiting on, even if I had nothing to tell that vendor, I would call the vendor and say, "Sorry Fred, I've got nothing to tell you, but I just want you to know that as soon as I do have something, I'll phone you straight away." It's the right thing to do.
John Moxham, aka Dad, welcome to the Moxham Mindset.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a fairly special moment.
It sure is.
Being the Moxham Mindset and all.
Yes.
A lot of this mindset stuff has come from you, so that was a big part of the name. And
Only the good parts.
Only the good parts, of course, yes, that's right. The launch of Moxham Commercial as well. We were due to do this a little bit earlier, this interview, in line with the launch of Moxham Commercial, which obviously due to COVID we couldn't, so thank you for coming in.
It's an absolute pleasure.
So, to fill in the audience, tell us a little bit about your real estate career, Dad.
Gee, all 60 years of it?
Yes, so about 60 years. I didn't know if 60 or 62, yes, as an agent.
1960, 2nd of January 1960.
Oh, you remember the actual date?
I do.
Oh.
I do.
In Parramatta.
I remember how it happened.
Okay.
I was working in the city at the time, left school in 57 and spent 2 years with a wool-broking company, Winchcombe Carson, in Bridge Street in the city.
Righto.
And I came home one day. My father was a real estate agent working from home and selling little farmlets around the Hills District and Wiseman's Ferry.
Ah.
And he said to me, he's going to open an office in Parramatta. Would I like to come with him? And I remember it like yesterday. We were sitting around the dining table and I said, sure would. And so I gave notice at Winchcombes, and within the month I was at Victoria Road, Parramatta.
Wow, oh, Victoria Road, right. I have had a few people over the years say, oh, your office used to be on Victoria Road. And I said, no, it was in Macquarie Street.
Yeah.
And okay, so that was the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So 60 years and starting with Pop in Victoria, on Victoria Road. And so Moxham Real Estate, back in the day, quite a big business in Parramatta, wasn't it, for many years?
It did grow into a big business. It took a while, of course.
How long did it take to grow, from your memory?
Probably within 5 or 6 years, we moved out of that office into another office in Macquarie Street. And then we began specialising in redevelopment sites.
That's where I get that from.
And that morphed into the marketing of the units when the sites were constructed.
Yep.
And so that morphed into having a big sales team. And that was 95 Macquarie Street.
Yes, and you were there for a long time.
Long time.
And
long time.
At the time, there was a few agents. It was only a couple of big agents in Parramatta at the time. Yourself and Leonard Odes, and then
we were the two biggest at the time. Yeah.
Yes, and then John Sirian from Rain and Horn came along.
He did. Yeah.
Yes.
And it was a different culture then. The agents all worked together in those days. If I had a buyer and Len had a property, I could ring Len and we'd do a conjunction.
Isn't that interesting?
And it just worked. And Len would do the same in reverse. And there were 3 or 4 agents and we all did the same thing. So we shared clientele, we shared property. And I'm sort of disappointed that's all sort of gone by the board, because I've always thought it's not such a good thing for the vendor if an agent refuses another agent's buyer, because he's got to share his commission. Our role is to sell the property.
Yep, and for the best price in whatever way.
Absolutely. And if you give me a buyer, then I give you a buyer.
That's it.
It's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
And you work together and it's a better service for the vendors.
That fits in very well with what you've said a lot during our lives growing up, is that you get what you give, and you give good energy out and you get good energy back.
Well, that's a life ethic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't get if you don't give.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty basic, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was back in the day with the EAC multi-list,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes. So there was an automatic sharing,
Yeah.
but then we grew up to do that.
Yes.
And even without the EAC,
Mm.
there'd be a group of us in Parramatta, half a dozen, that we'd just meet, we'd have lunch, we'd talk about our properties, our purchases, and we'd just swap information.
Wow.
And
How different is it today?
It was just lovely.
Yeah. And that's a lot to do with the whole relationship side of real estate. Back then it's also was with the agents as well as, you know, one of the things I love about real estate, and I know you do too, is it's about the relationships. But back then it was also the community and the relationships of the agents, by the sounds of it.
Yes. Well, most of us did a lot of community work,
Right.
and that sort of exposed your own particular brand,
Yes.
and so that put you out into the community a fair bit,
Yes.
and that was enjoyable too.
Yeah.
Because you're giving to the community,
Yep.
and you don't necessarily go into, for example, Rotary to get business back,
No.
but it just automatically does flow back. And in the meantime, you're doing a lot of things. You're raising money and you're giving it back
Yes.
to the community.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
very satisfying too.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, you've already commented on one thing that's very different about real estate today, and what is something that hasn't changed today that's required to be a good real estate agent?
The hours that you put in, it's not 9 to 5.
Yep.
Your telephone, your business goes home with you overnight.
Yes.
Not too good with your family life sometimes.
Yes. That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed.
No.
Going on holidays, it's very hard to turn your telephone off.
Yes. That hasn't changed either.
No.
No.
And vendors expect to be able to speak to the real estate agent, but more so expect the real estate agent to be in touch with them.
Yes.
And one thing that I learnt very early in my real estate life is I tried, at the end of the day, if there was something that a vendor was waiting on, even if I had nothing to tell that vendor, I would call the vendor and say, "Sorry, Fred, I've got nothing to tell you, but I just want you to know that as soon as I do have something, I'll phone you straight away."
Yes.
And I think that's important. So the vendor, therefore, doesn't go to bed and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking that bloody agent, he hasn't rung me, you know.
Oh man, it's just such a big piece of.
And it is really important.
It is, isn't it?
It just doesn't start at 9 and finish at 5 days a week.
Yes.
It's
yes.
7 days and it's long hours.
Yes, it is. And that's something that I tell my team, is that if your vendor has to ring you and ask you what's going on, then they really should never have to do that.
That's a red flag to the agent.
That's a red flag, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
Yes, it's the agent's job, you know, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's good manners, apart from good business.
It's good manners, that's it.
A lot of it is about good manners.
Yes.
Good business is a lot to do with good manners.
And just good ethics, and just doing, as you always said, just doing the right thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like a life ethic,
not
isn't
hard.
it? No.
It's not hard to do the right thing.
It's not, is it?
You don't have to go to ethics school to know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, that's it.
And you certainly shouldn't ever be motivated by your commission.
Very good point.
Your motivation is selling the property for the vendor, and the commission just flows.
That's it.
That's our job.
You used to say to me, put that calculator away and don't count that commission until you've done the deal.
Absolutely correct.
The other thing you used to say to me is, never do a deal based on the promise of another deal.
Definitely not.
How?
Because that that fractures the first deal you're trying to negotiate.
That's it.
And the vendor will feel that.
Yeah.
Oh, he's just being nice to me because he thinks he might get something down the road.
Yeah. Or the buyer in how many times do you, oh, mate, look after me on this one and I'll sort you out in the future. And, I just was one of the main things that you told me right from the very beginning is, and we put it up on a post just the other day, actually, and it went really well, is you've always got to be able to walk down the street and hold your head high and never have to want to cross the street because someone else was walking along the street. I've never, ever forgotten
that's the crossing the street story, isn't it?
It's the crossing the street story.
Yeah.
And just doing the right thing by your vendor. And I'm asking these questions because we have a big agent community, and I think there's, in the hard and fast real estate world that we're in today, I think, sometimes things aren't done right and it's very competitive, and it's easy for people to to think about a quick buck, but it's definitely not a quick buck industry, is it?
There's no such thing in real estate.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
If you don't do it right, it's not going to be right.
That's it.
And if you do it dodgy, you're going to get busted.
That's it.
Sooner or later.
Yeah. What have you loved about real estate? For young agents listening that might be thinking about getting into real estate, or what have you loved most about real estate?
The people.
Yes.
And since I've retired, which is now only 9 months ago,
yeah,
I'm missing the people.
Ah.
Even the people that are annoying, you still miss them. You still miss not getting a deal done with somebody who was really annoying.
Yeah.
And being able to negotiate through that annoyance and get the deal done.
What's the best way, do you think, to handle a difficult client or a difficult situation?
Never raise your voice.
Yes.
That's not going to work.
No.
Listen. And try and get your vendor or your purchaser to be reasonable.
Yes.
And you've got to provide information to that vendor and that purchaser.
Yes.
To get them to be reasonable.
Yes.
But the information's got to be correct.
Yep.
Not something that you make up in the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
What you say has got to be correct. So
yeah.
If you're not sure, you don't say it.
That's it.
Because it might turn out to be wrong and
yeah,
you'll get busted.
Yeah.
You'll get found out, eh?
Oh, that's so good. We're going to have a short break, and then we're going to be back for part 2. See you in a second.
I'll be here.
1960. How much did you sell your first property for? And do you remember it?
What I remember, I think it was in my second year in Victoria Road. I sold 7 properties in 1 month.
Oh.
And I remember thinking, this is a pretty easy gig, this. How long's this been going on? And I think the average price would have been around £3,000 or £4,000.
Right. What sort of properties were they?
Just little old Parramatta houses. Little old timber houses. Yeah, so of course pounds went to dollars in 66.
Right.
And the first house that I bought was at number 8 Carver Crescent.
Oh.
And that was $12,600. So that was just after pounds went to dollars.
Yes, right. Okay.
And I was reading recently that since 1960 up until, say, now, there's been something like a 6,000% increase in property values.
Wow. That's insane, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's probably only another couple of countries in the world that have had that sort of
really
escalation over that period.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. So there's no better investment than real estate.
Yes. Yeah, Sydney real estate, you can't really go wrong, can you?
No.
Can't really go wrong. No. You'd think after the last 20 years that I've been aware of it.
Well, I think I've always worked on an annual increase of around 8%. And, you get your booms and you get your busts.
Yep.
But over a 10-year period,
Yep.
I think that's still probably the case.
Yep.
I mean, we've had big increases in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
But not much before that for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we may not get much in the next couple of years either.
Yep.
From what we're seeing is happening in the marketplace.
Yep. Yep. It's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so to buy real estate, you need to buy long term.
Yep.
It's not often it's a quick turnaround.
Yep.
It can happen.
Unless you're very lucky.
That's right. You can be fortunate and buy just before the boom.
Yep.
And then, wow, it can just take off.
Yeah.
But you can buy at the top of the boom.
Yep.
Market drops.
Yep.
Your equity drops.
Yep.
Banks get a little bit nervous about that.
Yep.
So
Be careful.
be careful.
Yes.
Always, yeah.
You had quite a big sales team at Moxham Real Estate back in the sort of 70s and 80s. You had big sales teams in the 70s and 80s. I wish I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, oh, yeah, I did my cadetship back at Moxham Real Estate. You've said a few things to me over the years about managing sort of teams and, big personalities and big egos, big commission earners. Give us some thoughts on your experience in managing, big sales teams of agents.
Always very hands-on.
Yes.
And I spent a lot of time with the sales staff.
Yep.
We had blocks of units open every weekend.
Yep.
And a number of them. And I would go around each block of units every weekend to make sure they'd turned up or they hadn't gone to sleep in the car. Put the signs out,
Yep.
open for inspection signs up and down the streets.
Yep.
So it wasn't just to check on what they were doing, it was to be with them
Yep.
and doing it with them.
Mm.
And it sort of brought us all together as a team.
Mm.
And it created a lot of honesty between everybody. And I encouraged the sales staff to work together, not to be in competition with each other. I've never thought that's a good thing, and it worked well.
That's awesome.
And in our sales meetings, were always happy sales meetings.
Yep.
If somebody was having a bit of a rough trot, I'd spend a bit more time with him.
Yep.
And if somebody had to leave the company, or had to terminate somebody, it would be as a result of after many conversations.
Yep.
And then it would be, sorry mate, this is just not working.
Yep.
And so it would never be a shock, it would
Yeah.
never be a surprise.
Yep.
Today, of course, it's a lot different to the way it was then. There's a lot of technical process before you can put somebody off.
Mm.
But that was not the case then.
Mm.
It was still a relationship that they might go and work with somebody else in the district, and I never prevented that. If they
Yep.
wanted to go and work with another agent
Yep.
in the district,
Yep.
I was never upset about that, and I
Yep.
just expected them to keep to themselves listings that they might have had at our place.
Yes.
And not,
Yeah.
that would be upsetting.
Yeah.
But I don't ever recall it happening. So that's an indication of a good relationship that I had with the staff, with the sales staff.
Yeah, definitely. And you said to me once, on a couple of occasions, you'd have big fee earners, but also big disruptive personalities, and they didn't last in the business because the culture is more important than the big fees.
It didn't fit with my philosophy.
Yes.
So yes, they sort of just had to move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had a very effective Asian man working with us, and he was with me for 25 years.
Yes.
And so when we were dealing with Asian clientele, everybody would include Felix.
Yes, I remember Felix.
Yes, and they just work out a commission between them.
Yep.
And it just sort of helped us get that deal together because he worked hard, he was honest.
Yep.
And he never tried to really push the envelope in terms of getting more commission from the salesman.
Yep.
He was always fair, and it worked well. We all work well together.
That's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Interest rates, topical discussion this week and this year. Tell us about interest rates in the 80s.
Well, I was paying 17%. I think it was at the end of the 80s and early 90s.
Yep.
So interest rates at 17%
Yeah.
was a real cruncher.
Yeah.
And I was always behind. And so I had to pay penalties.
Uh-huh.
And I think the penalties were around 2 or 3%.
Oh.
So I was paying 19 and 20%. And that went on for a long time. It was a recession that I think Paul Keating said we had to have. And it went on for ages.
Mm.
And on many occasions, the only person that wasn't getting a salary in the office was me.
Mm.
My bank manager was getting a hard time because I'd be on the telephone all the time trying to increase my overdraft.
Yes.
But then after that, we had a boom time.
Yeah.
And so all the debt that you'd accumulated, then that was repaid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was just a matter of tightening your belt and getting through those times. And after every recession, during the recession, you really had to tighten your belt.
Yep.
And at the end of every recession, you turned out to be a better operator. So when you're in boom times, you had plenty of long lunches, and
Yep.
those long lunches often went into long dinners.
Yeah.
And so all of that had to stop, and it was back to
Yep.
long hours, 7 days.
Yep.
And you had to be in a good state to be able to do that.
It's like any tough time, isn't it? It's tough at the time, but it creates the good stuff, doesn't it? It's like polishing the diamond.
It's such a good feeling when you come out of it,
Yeah.
and you know you've come out of it, you know you've done well,
Yep.
and then you can really, really start to crank in some dollars.
Yes.
I remember when they removed negative gearing, the market just died, the housing market died. 70% of our sales were to investors,
Right.
and they all went. And then when they brought back negative gearing, because there became a real shortage of rental accommodation then, so the government brought negative gearing back, and we were selling places almost without leaving the office.
Mm.
And all the investors, the day they brought negative gearing back, the phones started ringing off the hook.
Mm.
And it was obvious they were going to do that, and I'd got together a lot of stock. We had 10 or 12 blocks of units that we had under control, and they just all sold.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a wonderful feeling.
That's so good.
Yeah. So it's like anything, you put the effort in, you get the reward.
Yeah.
No effort, no reward.
No effort, no reward.
No, pretty simple.
That's a good saying. And speaking of sayings, we've coined a few things that you have said, but when I say we, my sister and I and your family members, that things that you almost like your sort of life mottos, really, that we've called Moxisms. So I'm going to ask you what you think these phrases mean to you. And
This will be good.
Yeah, this will be good. This will be good. There's a couple I probably can't say, but this is the first one. The first Moxham is just keep getting the ball back.
Well, you either just keep getting the ball back, and the end of that was sooner or later you'll hit a winner. But mate, if you don't get the ball back, you're not going to hit a winner. And it might take long, long rallies,
Yep,
but sooner or later you'll hit a winner.
that's brilliant.
And it's the same as you got to keep putting the paddle in the river.
Yep,
The more you put the paddle in the river, the further you'll go.
yep.
Simple.
I know you said that for many years, and I used to say to you, I don't want to just get the ball back, I want to hit aces. And it only actually became apparent to me in recent years, or like sort of, it only just became apparent to me in recent years, actually. The real meaning of that is just no matter how hard it is, just keep putting that one foot in front of the other, and you'll get there eventually. And can't always hit aces, but as you just said, you gotta hit the shots before you can hit the aces.
And there can be that big bucket full of negatives.
Yes.
And you look at that bucket and you think, oh. But you know, at the bottom of the bucket, there's going to be a lot of positives.
Yes.
And you've just got to dig down through all those negatives to get that positive.
Yep. There's one always there. There's always a learning.
Yeah, there's always one there somewhere, lurking away,
Yeah.
just waiting to be grabbed and gone with.
That's it.
And it's so satisfying.
It is.
You know, it's so satisfying being able to do that. Come
Yeah.
through those hard times and come out the other end.
Oh, I have to say I've learned a lot about that from you. This is probably most popular, gets most amusement when I tell people this one. Feed your ego or feed your family.
Oh, the old ego.
This is a message. This is one for the agents.
Well, how often is it that you're on the phone and you've got a really annoying vendor or purchaser on the other phone, and you just want to get up him. You just want to have a crack. But what's the point in that? All you're going to do is put him offside, and it's only because of your ego, because you don't want to lose the argument, and you want to make the point that you're right, and you probably are. But you don't have to win that argument. You've got to get the deal done. So forget about your ego. Just, yes dear, no dear, and sooner or later, you'll get the message across just quietly. And if it gets too hectic, hang up and go and have a cup of coffee and come back and have another go.
Brilliant.
No point in continuing to have an argument with one of your clients.
Yep. Yeah.
You don't have to, they're not always right.
No.
But you've got to quietly show them where they're wrong.
That is a great skill, and I think it comes with age and it comes with maturity. And I think I used to actually see how you would handle situations when I started in real estate. And I remember specifically a couple of them, and I was like, oh, how am I ever going to be able to do that? Just hold my cool with, you're dealing with difficult people, and it comes with experience and comes with age. So, and there's another one, just keep swinging and you'll hit someone sooner or later.
Well, your arms will get tired, but just keep swinging.
Sort of like keep getting the ball back, isn't it?
Yeah,
just keep going.
Just same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, back to the office.
Yeah. Mate, in 60 years, you've been through a huge amount in your industry. I talk often about having to give you a lifetime referral fee for all the deals that I do as a result of the brand that you created with Moxham Real Estate, and I'm forever benefiting from that with all the clients that I see that knew you. I was with just one the other day who, George Hamad, he was talking so fondly about all the deals you used to do and how they were always good deals and there was always good times and a lot of honesty. So thank you for that, because it's a week doesn't go by where something like that comes up. And for all of the agents out there listening, it's not hard to do the right thing, and that's what's going to get you through, and it's all about longevity. Thank you for everything you've taught me, and
makes me pretty proud seeing you where you are. Let me say that.
Thank you.
That's a lovely feeling.
Thank you. Well, you've taught us all that. So, do you remember when I told you I was going to start Moxham Commercial?
Yes.
Just recently?
Yes.
What did you think?
I thought, this is a big call. This is a gutsy call. And with what Jeffrey has achieved, this is what I was saying to myself, with what he had achieved and the client base that I know he has, he's going to do very well. And it's going to be tough to start with, but and this is me having a conversation with me. It'll be tough to start with, but he'll guts it out and he'll do well, very well. And the people that he's dealing with will support him because of the relationship that he has with them. And go Jeff.
Well, it wasn't a coincidence that Moxham Real Estate finished 1 year, and I thought, that can't happen. I'm going to bring it back. So here we are, and I say again, thank you for all of the hard work you did in your career, because I'm riding the wave. So
all the way to the beach, mate.
that's it, mate. All the way.
You don't get off until you get onto the sand.
That's it. Might get dumped, but
You get up again and you have another crack. That's what you do.